Good morning, students. Welcome to the next online perio class. So, today's topic is pathogenesis of periodontal disease. It is a little complicated topic, but let me simplify it as much as I can for you. Okay. So, to begin with pathogenesis, how does this entire thing start? It starts because there are microorganisms in the oral cavity. Okay. So I had mentioned to you even earlier that near the sulcus, okay, for the environment that is present there, it is really helpful for the gram-positive organisms to come there and survive. Okay, so first of all, your primary colonizers, if you remember from my plaque video, so the first type of microorganisms that come in and settle over there are your gram-positive organisms. Okay, so they will be there, they will use up the oxygen that is present there, and they will slowly tend to change the environment there because they are using up whatever is available, whatever oxygen, whatever nutrients are available, they are using it up. Okay, so then that environment is not very favorable further for gram-positive organisms to further come and colonize. That environment is now favorable for your gram-negative organisms. Okay, so gram-negative anaerobic organisms starts to come there and they start to survive. Okay, so as the number of your gram-negative anaerobic organisms increase in the sulcus, that is where the destruction starts to take place, or that is where pathogenesis really starts to come into picture. Now what happens? These gram-negative microorganisms, now they have to fight against the host cells, right? So they will have certain weapons, okay? And the weapons that your gram-negative organisms or in general any microorganisms have, they are called as virulence factors, okay? So the virulence factors of microorganisms act as their weapons. Now I will show you a diagram in which different types of virulence factors are present for the same bacteria. Now in periodontal pathogenesis, the important virulence factors that you have to know or you have to understand are, one is lipopolysaccharide. Okay, so this is something that is present at the outer membrane of your gram-negative microorganisms. Lipopolysaccharide. Okay, so that is one weapon. Another such weapon which is easy to understand is the fimbriae. Okay, fimbriae is something like a tail-like extension of the microorganism which will help it to bind and etc. etc. It basically acts as a virulence factor. Okay. Also, these microorganisms, as they come in larger proportion in that area, they also tend to release certain gases like hydrogen sulfide and ammonia, which also cause direct tissue damage. Okay. So coming back, these are the different types of virulence factors that the microorganisms will release. Now what will these virulence factors do? They will go and activate or activate kind of the host defense cells. Okay. Now to explain regarding this, I thought I'll just individually tell you the different small cycles or flowcharts that are involved. That will help you to understand it better. But actually it is really very complicated with a lot of mediators involved and a lot of other substances involved, which makes the understanding of pathogenesis very complicated. So I'll just tell it to you in simple manner. Okay, so one such cycle that I want to tell you is I told you there will be some host cells that are activated. Okay, so one such type of host cell, or let me put it as host cells like your neutrophil and cells like your epithelial cells, they have something called as antibacterial peptides. Okay, it's also called as antimicrobial peptides. So what do these antimicrobial peptides do? They get attracted to the cell wall of the bacteria, and once they get attracted over there, they will insert their peptide link into it and cause bacterial lysis. Okay, very simply put, neutrophils and other epithelial cells, they will release antibacterial peptides. These antibacterial peptides will cause bacterial lysis. Okay, so few examples of your antibacterial peptides are your alpha defensins, mucins, lactoferrin, etc. Okay, so I hope the first cycle is clear to you. Now another cycle that I can tell you is, for example, these epithelial cells and your lymphocytes, they have some things on their surface called as the pattern recognition receptors. Okay, basically if this is your cell, they have something on the surface. It's called the pattern recognition receptor. Okay, so what do? They go and bind to the bacterial lipopolysaccharide. Okay, I told you the virulence factors. So these cells which contain pattern recognition receptors, they will recognize the pattern of your lipopolysaccharide, of your fimbriae and other virulence factors, combine and cause bacterial lysis. Okay, so I hope the two cycles that I told you is clear to you. One involves antimicrobial peptides and the other is regarding pattern recognition receptors. Okay, now two types of cells that require a little bit of extra explanation over here are your mast cells and neutrophils. Okay, so these mast cells also play a very important role in the pathogenesis of periodontal disease. Okay, once these microorganisms are in action and they secrete their virulence factors, these virulence factors will go and activate your mast cells. Now mast cells are activated by a lot of other stimuli also, but one such stimuli which is relevant to us over here right now is the virulence factor of microorganisms. Also the degraded host tissues. Now microorganisms are also causing direct tissue damage. So those host tissues are also responsible for the activation of mast cells. And mast cells, once they get activated, they tend to release all their granules. They tend to degranulate. Now there are a plethora of granules that it releases, of which the most important ones for us right now, I'll be explaining only about them. Okay, so one such granule that it releases, it's the histamine. Okay, now histamine, what does it do? It will go and increase the vascular permeability. If the vascular permeability is increased, definitely there is more chance for more defense cells and more things to come up on the surface and participate in the fight, right? Okay, so it will cause vasodilation, increased vascular permeability. And eventually it will, if the vessels will dilate, there's more chances for the fluids to also come up, right? And that is how in the broader clinical picture you will find edema of the gingiva. Okay, so I'm just trying to connect in places wherever I can the microscopic picture to your clinical picture. Okay, so I'll just repeat this for you. Histamine will cause increased vascular permeability, and hence there will be more fluids that are released, and hence there will be edema of the gingiva in the clinical picture. Okay, so that's one thing that the histamine does. Another thing that it will do is, for your neutrophils to come out of the endothelium and participate over here, it has to have a certain adhesion molecule called P-selectin, okay, placed at the area where it has to get outside. Now this histamine helps in the mobilization of the adhesion molecule P-selectin to the endothelial surface. Okay, so those were the two functions of histamine. Many other functions, but the important two functions. Okay, so two functions of histamine I told you. So in that area where it has put the P-selectin, over there the neutrophils will come, and there is this entire process with the help of so many other mediators and things, the neutrophils evolve out of the endothelium, which is called as transendothelial migration. Okay, now they've come outside. Okay, now mast cells, I told you, they secrete histamine. They also secrete something called as chemoattractants. Okay, so they are basically the chemical signals that will attract the neutrophils. Okay, now the neutrophils go and get attracted to the area of the bacteria, and they will phagocytose, which is they will engulf the bacteria. Okay, so this neutrophil cycle is given in detail in your first year and second year textbooks. So I'll only mention the names. Okay, if you don't know this properly, please refer those texts back and then watch the next video. Okay, so I was telling there is this neutrophil, there is transendothelial migration, there is chemotaxis, phagocytosis, in which they will engulf the bacteria. Okay, now, okay, I'll also mention that phagocytosis has taken place. Okay, and once a phagocytosis takes place, they will tend to release certain free radicals. Okay, these free radicals also cause damage to the microorganisms, whereas they also cause some amount of damage to the host cells. Fine. And this free radicals together, they are called as reactive oxygen species. So these reactive oxygen species are formed by the neutrophils. And these reactive oxygen species, whatever negative effect it causes, to nullify that, the body has another mechanism called as the antioxidants. Okay, so certain antioxidants like your resolvins and lipoxins, they will go and nullify the effect of your reactive oxygen species such that it does not cause further damage. Okay, so I hope that is also clear to you. Now coming back to the mast cells, these mast cells also release certain pro-inflammatory cytokines, and that is what my next cycle is about. So the next cycle I want to mention to you regarding cytokines. What are these cytokines and from where are they released? For example, your neutrophils and your mast cells, all these will tend to release cytokines. Cytokines are basically a protein which will help to transmit signal from one cell to another. Okay, they will help to transmit the signal like your mobile phone. It will help to transmit the signal from one cell to another. Okay, so there are two types of cytokines. There are pro-inflammatory cytokines which will cause inflammation. Okay, like interleukin 6, interleukin 1, and there are anti-inflammatory cytokines. Okay, like your interleukin 10. There are many other pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory cytokines. The list is given in Carranza. Please refer to the text as well. So coming back, there are pro-inflammatory cytokines and anti-inflammatory cytokines. Okay, so these are released by your neutrophils, mast cells, etc. Now, when they are released, if the quantity of anti-inflammatory cytokines is more, then the chances for further destruction is less, or further inflammatory process is less. If the pro-inflammatory cytokines are more, then they will go and activate your osteoclast. Okay, so I hope that cycle is also clear to you. Now, just very similar to that, there is another type of cell called, there's another type of compound called your matrix metalloproteinases. Okay, so that is also released by your mast cells and various other cells. What do? They will cause extracellular collagen matrix degradation. Okay, so if these neutrophils and other cells are activated, they also tend to release certain matrix metalloproteinases. Now this matrix metalloproteinases is also a very big family. Different members do different kind of things and different types of destruction. Some of them will destruct the basement membrane. Some of them, for example, I think it is, MMP13 will cause osteoclast activation, and they will cause extracellular matrix degradation. So different types of cells will cause different types of effects. The list is given in Carranza. Okay, so that is how your MMPs are also further causing, like they are also part of this immunity system. Okay, now one very important concept that you have to understand over here is, they've given it very well in Carranza. Your periodontal disease is definitely caused because primarily there is microorganism, but it gets so complicated and so much destruction takes place because of the overreaction of the host. Can you believe it? So the way they have mentioned it here is excessive and dysregulated production of a variety of inflammatory mediators and destructive enzymes in response to the presence of subgingival plaque is what causes periodontal disease. Yeah. So there are so many neutrophils, so many mast cells, etc. involved, and you know all these are present at that small area of the sulcus. Okay, so once the neutrophil content over there gets more than 60%, it becomes difficult for the tissue to even hold them. Okay, so if the neutrophil becomes more than 60% in the area, then the tissue slowly starts to lose its cohesiveness, and there begins your loss of attachment in the broader clinical picture. Okay, so if loss of attachment is started, means this is what is going on microscopically. Okay, not exactly, but yeah, so there is loss of attachment that starts to take place. Okay, so now coming back to the microscopic level, now I told you there is increased neutrophils and increased mast cells. All these are causing increased overproduction of reactive oxygen species that is having its own negative effect. Increased production of pro-inflammatory cytokines, they are also causing their own negative effects whatever is possible. Then increased prostaglandin E2, increased tumor necrotic factor, increased MMPs. All this will cause what? All this will go and stimulate your osteoclast bone resorption. Okay, now once the osteoclast is stimulated, how do they cause bone resorption? Now you can even see this diagram. It is from Carranza. Okay, in the diagram you will see there are so many alphabets and so many mediators involved, but if I am to put it in a very simple manner to you, then it's just that you know certain precursor cells which can in future become osteoclast, certain precursor cells have a type of receptor on them called as RANK. Okay, RANK, which is receptor activator of nuclear factor B. Okay, so there is RANK which is present on the surface of your precursor cells. Okay, and now there is something else called RANKL, RANKL, which is like the partner in crime. So the RANKL will bind together, then it will cause activation of your osteoclast. Okay, now for their binding they require a lot of these mediators which I told you, TNF and interleukins and all that. Okay, so that is how I told you all of them will come and contribute to your osteoclast induced destruction. Okay, so coming back, this RANKL will bind with each other and they will cause the activation of osteoclast, and the osteoclast will cause bone resorption. Now there is something else called as OPG, osteopontegrin. Okay, that acts as a decoy protein. Okay, so what does that do? OPG will come and take away this RANKL. If RANKL is not there, then RANK will not cause bone osteoclast formation. Okay, so over here you need to understand that the OPG RANKL ratio is what will determine if there will be excess bone loss or not. Okay, and if you see that in the clinical picture there is bone loss excessively, means that the OPG RANKL ratio such that the OPG is less and more RANKL is available for the RANK, and they are combining together and they are forming osteoclast, and this osteoclast is causing bone resorption. Okay, so that was regarding all this that I mentioned in today's class is regarding the innate immunity. Okay, other than this there is acquired immunity, there is complement system, there are many mediators involved that will interlink all of them. Okay, so the simple portion, the innate immunity portion is covered in this video. Please do send me your feedbacks, and the next video will be about the other aspects of pathogenesis. Thank you.